Good evening. That's not working.
It is now.
Oh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We might make a start on our information night for Year 11 2019. By way of introduction, my name's Greg Cerrone. I'm the Year 10 coordinator for this year, looking after your sons, and I'll be acting as MC tonight. As we normally do, when we come together as a community, we begin with prayer, and I'd invite Lindsay and Jake to come out and lead us in prayer.
We pause to remember the uniqueness of this place. We honour and respect the generations of the Thorold people who held this land in their dreaming. We begin our prayer for wisdom this evening in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Loving God, wisdom is the absolute comprehension of all things, past, present and future. In Paul's letter to James, he writes that we demonstrate this wisdom in the way we live, remaining pure, peaceful, gentle, merciful, and completing good works.
We pray that through our learning as students, we gain this wisdom. We pray that the knowledge and insights we develop enable us to understand better our place in the world. May we model our lives on the example of Christ and work together in our Marish way to make this world a better place. Amen. St. Marcelin Chapanian, Mary, our good mother, and let us always remember, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Just a little bit of housekeeping first, because this will be the last time that I get to speak at any length. But at the end of last term, all families were emailed some information sheets regarding the challenge activities that we offer Year 10 boys over and above the normal end-of-year camp. They were the Overland Track hike in Tasmania, and the Murrumbidgee paddle, and the tall ship sail. That information was sent home to all families at the end of last term, and in that it was stated that the registration forms for those activities, if any of the boys were interested in putting their names down for that, they would be available tonight. Now, I have a bundle of them to distribute when we cease the formalities of the evening. So if you wanted to grab one of those at the end of the night from me, then come up and see me and I will give you one. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those parents who are jumping on the HSC merry-go-round for the very first time. You might be thinking that maybe the ride doesn't really begin until 2019, but sit back and buckle up, because basically it starts tonight. And to start the ride off, I'd like to introduce you to our Director of Studies, Mr. Barry Graham.
I'd also like to welcome everyone and thank you for your attendance. As Ms. Cerrone just said, it is a really important time, and particularly the next 5 to 6 weeks, where the focus will be on the choices, pathways, and how much you get involved so that you can decide what sort of subjects and what sort of pathways you're going to do over the HSC. What I'd like to achieve in my time up here tonight is to address some of those questions that are up on the screen. This is a process that one person doesn't have all the answers, and tonight you'll have an opportunity to speak to KLA coordinators, listen to a couple of KLA coordinators, Miss Dean for TVET and other vocational courses. But there are many people that, gentlemen, you'll need to speak to, ask questions of, to be involved and really grab hold of this process and make the most of it, because it is a process over the next 5 weeks that will dictate what sort of HSC experience you'll have because of the subjects that you'll choose. So firstly, why tackle Year 11 and Year 12? Well, in 2010, New South Wales school leaving age was raised to 17 because research shows that early school leavers are 2.5 times more likely to be unemployed. earn lower wages and have poor quality of life outcomes. And there's a lot more research on the department's website, and again, this PowerPoint will be made available to the students tomorrow from Central, so all the links and all the information the boys will have access to. Obviously, to obtain the HSC credential, it's one of the most recognised, well-respected senior credentials worldwide in education. But with that comes a lot of responsibility for students and for parents and for the schools that offer it. To develop skills, experience, and I'm not sure what it is, but I've been here about 14 years now, and when I first started and heard many teachers and people in my position say, I'm not sure what it is, but when boys change from, or leave year 10 and moved into year 11 and 12, there's a certain level of maturity that happens almost overnight. And certainly in the last few years, dealing with boys in this age group, and particularly around the subject selection process, the HSC is a time for boys to mature. So parents, I know that they're probably not offering all that level of maturity right at the moment in various aspects. Certainly some will. I've got a boy in year 8, and at times his level of maturity, I just shake my head and I think, oh, what a journey I've got ahead of me. But there is a lot of maturity that happens over that year 11 and year 12. We do see boys really step up, and that's because of the experiences, the conversations, the role modelling that they have, and the opportunities they have here at St Greg's. Obviously, better prepare for life after school and that transition to work, and all the experiences they'll be given there, chances for public speaking, work experience, the experiences or challenges at the end of year 10 that Mr. Sarone spoke about, and how boys mature during that. So it's not just year 11 and for that HSC, there's also that whole philosophy about boys developing into fine young men, and we certainly do believe that through the opportunities in our co-curricular program. It's one of the real benefits for boys tackling year 11 and year 12 at St Greg's. Specifically to prepare for TAFE, and obviously beyond TAFE, attain the ATAR if you are planning on studying at the university. Parents, again, for some of us, we're really familiar with this, with older siblings and children, but until students are 17, they must be in school or registered for homeschooling, be approved educational training, or in full-time paid employment, or in a combination of these. And we know from the last few years since that change in the leaving age that a number of students do start year 11, under the intention, with the intention that they are going to leave as soon as they hit 17 and do a whole range of other things. I just ask, if you are one of those boys or parents of a boy who already knows, don't keep that a secret. We understand, but that's really important that that's part of the conversation during the interviews, because whilst they're here, there are expectations, and they're just sort of sitting around hoping as soon as they hit that 17, they're just going to walk. You know, that first 3 months while they're 16 and 9 months can be a really difficult time. So if you are one of those boys or one of those families, please let us know so we can work with you on that. I'd like to get this up and out of the way straight away. What's the timeline? So this was communicated to you at the end of last term in the letter that I sent, but essentially the next 2 weeks, starting tonight, the information evening, over the next 2 weeks, we'll have KLA coordinators provide information sessions to the boys on various subjects and the specifics about each subject. I also, over the next 2 weeks, for parents and students to do your own investigation, have a look at UAC, look at the website, look at our documents that we made available for parents to start asking questions about what particular pathways your sons may be following. In weeks 3 and 4 will be the mandatory subject interviews where Sue, Ms Dean, myself and maybe call on other staff will sit down in 10-15 minutes with each and every one of you to talk about your pattern of study, whether it's TVAT, SBT, vocational education, an ATAR, or a combination of any of those. In week 5, that's the decision time. The yellow form that you have in front of you, that's just a draft. In previous years, I've given out the original on the first night. By the time I get it back in 5 weeks, it's got about an inch of liquid paper on it. What I've done at the moment is given you a draft. It's yellow. During the interview period in weeks 3 and 4, you'll get a blue one. That's because I'm a Parramatta supporter. So the blue and gold there, it's about all I can celebrate at the moment. But in week 5, that's the decision time. So that's where the questions that you've asked, the conversations that you've had with Ms. Dean and myself, that all comes together, and we put down what subjects you would like to choose for your Year 11 and Year 12 HSC. The forms are due on the 29th of August. From week 6, as you can see up there, through to week 9, that's where I start constructing the actual grid or where the subjects are going to appear and what subjects are going to appear on with each line. And so essentially the matrix. Last year we had 186 students. When I got the first round, there was 176 different patterns of study. Okay, so it is an opportunity for boys to pick what they like, and obviously with that we do get a whole variety of different pathways. In week 9 and 10, I'll consult with families and students if there are issues, and then in week 1 of next term you'll receive which subjects you've been placed in for Year 11 and 12. So that's an overview of the timeline. Again, that was communicated. Again, gentlemen, it is a really busy one next few weeks for a whole variety of reasons, but that's the Wednesday after the free weekend, and I do start basically straight away. So if you're late, you go to the bottom of the pile. I started when I looking at putting together the slides, looking at what Nesser advised. And up on the screen there, this is taken from Nesser's website, and again, links will be in the documents that you'll have available. They have their own PowerPoint for Year 10 families and boys, and this is what they advise. Sorry, aim to obtain the best HSC result you can. Choose courses that you're good at, interested in, and may use in the future. Parents, this is something particularly for you as well. This bit, when considering which courses to study, explore the content of a course. For example, what are the course outcomes? Will you be required to submit a major work or perform as part of your exams? Talk with your teachers about your strengths and weaknesses, as well as individual course requirements before making selections. So the whole variety of different information points, teachers, KLA coordinators, Nesser, the handbook you have there, you need to access all those points of information so you can make an informed decision. As I said, the HSC credential is rigorous. There are a lot of requirements and some of those requirements are up on the screen there. To be eligible for HSC, you must complete Year 9 and 10. You must satisfactorily complete the courses. You must make a serious attempt at Year 11 and Year 12. You meet the HSC minimum standards of literacy and numeracy. I'll just take a moment on the minimum standards. The boys will receive their logins for the practice tests for the minimum standards tomorrow during homeroom. If anyone would like to see me about minimum standards, whether you're in that category or not, happy to answer questions at the end. The test windows where we'll be doing between the 13th of August and the 14th of September, and between the 5th of November and the 7th of December. They're the 2 test windows. That's where boys who have not met the minimum standards will be resitting those tests to meet the minimum standards. I did communicate that to all families at the end of last term, but please see me. I've got copies of that letter here tonight if you'd like to see that as well. All right, so let's look at what are the requirements in the patterns of study. The prelim, you must study at least 12 units. In the HSC, it must be 10 units. Our study pattern here, because RE in English is compulsory, most students, majority of students do 13 units in Year 11, and we'll drop a subject at the end of Year 11 and carry through the Year 12 component, 11 units. So 13 in Year 11 and 11 in Year 12, but the minimum is 12 and 10. You must do 6 units of board developed. 2 units must be English or English studies. 3 courses or at least 4 subjects. Now, I don't expect you to sort of comprehend or digest all that right now. It is in the handbook, but certainly when we look at your pattern of study and what subjects you've chosen, we will analyse that to make sure that those requirements are met. Okay. Really quickly, there are different types of courses. On the back of that yellow sheet they have in front of you, there's different categories, there's two different tables. There are board endorsed and the board developed. Again, I won't go into all those details tonight, but certainly there are differences, and that's part of the learning experience the boys will learn over the next couple of weeks. We will go to Category A and Category B. I guess this is one of the important ones. Category A courses may be included in the calculation of the ATAR. If you do a Category A, most of those courses have a HSC exam at the end of it. In Category B, the exam is optional in most cases. However, to get an ATAR, you're only allowed to do 1 Category B subject. Okay. Again, looking at this slide, which I acknowledge came directly from Nesser's PowerPoint on subject selection information. And I want to highlight this one because to satisfactorily complete a course, students must follow the course, apply themselves and achieve some or all the course outcomes. Now, for teachers out there, you might be familiar with that because that's the language that appears in the N award warning letter that students may receive if they're not meeting the minimum requirements. So whether you're sitting there going, well, I don't need to know about the ATAR because I'm going to do X, Y and Z and I'm not going to even ask for an ATAR, it's irrelevant. If you want to achieve, if you want to receive the HSC, all students, whether they're doing an ATAR or a non-ATAR pattern, must follow the course, apply themselves or achieve some of all the course outcomes. And it's really important that we don't start with a mindset for those boys not after an ATAR, well, I don't have to work as hard, or I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that, I don't have to meet the requirements, hand in assignments on time. Well, you do, whether you're an ATAR or not. And that's really important. I think over the last few years, a number of boys early on feel that because they're in a non-ATAR pattern, that they're going to be treated differently, they've got more excuses, don't have to meet the requirements. Additional information, again there's some rules, and when you start looking at the subject selection booklet that you have in front of you, under each faculty there are specific pages for each courses. At the bottom of these courses there's a little ticker box that tells you whether it's a Category A, Category B, and what are some of the other requirements, because there are some combination of courses you can't do, rules set down by Nesser. At college here it's maximum of 2 vet courses. When you're considering subjects such as visual arts, design and technology, industrial technology, music, you really need to consider how much time, because all those courses listed there on the screen have major works, and they are major works that do require product. For other subjects, their product, quite often it's invisible. I talk to the boys, it's invisible because they go through the 2 years, we ask them to go to their room and study, they come down here in the hall in October, November, and they do an exam, and as parents you never get to see that. As teachers we never get to see that. But for the boys doing those subjects and others on the screen there, the boys do have to produce a product. It is a major work. Whether it's art, whether it's a performance, whether it's those fantastic timber projects we have on display the next term when they're all handed in, they do require. So you need to really consider, gentlemen, whether you're up to those type of subjects that are going to require a major work. And certainly we discourage boys doing 2 or those subjects together. You really need to have some evidence over the last few years that you're capable or organised to be able to do those subjects. There are a number of 1-unit courses listed there. I won't go into those, but they're help make boys get to that 13 in Year 11. All right, so what does the college say about what subjects, what information? We've heard what Nesser advises. This is what we say. What subjects and how should you choose them? Based on your abilities, you choose subjects in which you are capable of doing well. You need to set the bar high, not too high, but certainly it's not about trying to coast and pick subjects that you're just going to stroll through. You need to challenge yourself, and this is a fantastic opportunity. So it's about looking at your abilities. You've all got access to your reports, your past reports, and that will give you a really good indication of where you are up to in terms of your abilities. What interests you now and also in the future? Your career goals and needs, you need to be realistic there. And now obviously conversations we'll have with parents, and parents, I ask you to have those conversations with your boy. Again, it's not about discouraging the interest or washing out their dreams, but it's about being realistic and having some honest conversations and looking at their work habits. If you've received those letters from Mr. Miller over the years, or Mr. Brennan when he was acting head of school, rewarding you for the ones and twos on your reports, well then yes, a certain pattern of study will suit you. But if you're a student who has been encouraged or invited to a Monday afternoon session with Mr. Miller, well then you probably need to think about some of the subjects that require high levels of organisation. And obviously the teachers and the experts that we have here at the college, experts at universities, there's information guides. I know a student in Year 11 at the moment who contacted one of the universities and actually spoke to an old boy who was working as one of the careers assistants at that university. So universities can also offer you advice in the next few weeks. Don't feel afraid, you can contact them. But if you are looking at that, I think the first port of call there would be speak to Mrs. Dean, but she'll talk to me more about that later on. I've heard this over many years now, what to avoid. As many times as we try, boys will still pick subjects based on the urban myths, rumours about scaling and what subjects will get you a better result. I'll show you some tables in a moment to hopefully dispel some of those myths. Making choices with your friends, making choices based on what teacher you're going to get, or what teacher you think you might get, or where the subjects occur on the timetable this year. Every Year 11 grid is done based on the data from that year. So what happens this year with you boys has nothing to do with, and won't reflect what happened last year and where the subjects occur, how many classes are offered. It's all based on each year. So I encourage you please to make decisions based on information so you can make an informed decision. Let's look at the ATAR for a moment. What is the ATAR? The ATAR, Australian Tertiary Admission Rank. I'll get through this quickly. I won't read through all of it, but essentially it's a rank. It's what the universities use to offer students a place in a course. And you can find more about this, but quite often we get bogged down on how the ATAR is calculated. It's calculated based on scaled marks. Again, I won't read out what's in red there, you'll have access to it, but that is actually taken from the UAC website. Again, they've got a PowerPoint presentation for families, boys in Year 10 or girls in Year 10. And the message they're giving is this: any subject, any pattern of study, students can achieve well. I'm not going to go through the next two screens there. I'll move to this one. And I wanted to highlight that this is data from UAC from last year, 2017. Hopefully this dispels the myth that students picking particular types of courses can't get high ATARs, or the other way, do these subjects because you'll get scaled well. The ATAR is a rank. What you need to do is do well in that cohort of students doing that course. But you can see up there that there are Aboriginal studies. We've got a student doing Aboriginal studies by correspondence, visual arts, physics, category B subject. Again, they're not students from here, but that's, I just wanted to take it from that website. But you can see there that students doing all those courses can still achieve ATARs of 97 or above. So gentlemen, don't try and play the game on what subject's going to give you the best ATAR. You pick subjects based on your abilities, you pick subjects based on your interest, you pick subjects based on the advice you receive from teachers and your parents. Work hard, that gets you your ATAR. Let's meet Fred and Laura. I know we don't have any Lauras in year 10. We've certainly got some girls in your junior school, but that slide there is actually taken again from the UAC website. It's really important that you don't try and put all your eggs in one basket. We hear recently there's a real debate about selective schools in the public system and what's how that's influencing the education system and the coaching that goes with that. Okay, it's really important that when you are picking your subjects, and the reason I put that slide up there, on that yellow form you're asked to pick 9 subjects. You may end up, because of the combination, with your 9th preference. Obviously I'm aiming not to do that, I'm aiming to get everyone to have their first 7. But there are times where 2 courses will run up against one another, or a course is full, and based on academic performance over the last 3 years or 4 years, you're not going to be in that course. You'll have to go down and do your 8th or 9th preference. I put that slide up there because it's really important that you don't just do your top 7 and think that's it, okay, I'll just write down anything for 8 or 9, because 8 or 9 is what you might get. So you really need to put the thought into every subject you put on that subject. And there's evidence there, what that screen shows, that to do well in achieving an ATAR, you're better off doing a little bit better in all your subjects rather than putting all your eggs in one basket. That means it's really important you pick that your 5th subject is one that you're going to have some interest in. Okay. Again, forget trying to play the game. That's the advice that UAC gives us, that's the advice at Nesser, and that's the advice we give. Work hard, get the best marks you can in the subjects you've chosen. That'll give you the best ATAR. Just really quickly before Ms. Gardner comes up to talk about English, religious education is compulsory in both years. There are Catholic Studies, which is a non-ATAR 1-unit course that students can do over year 11 and 12, or there is the Studies of Religion, which is an ATAR subject, category A, or a SOR2, which is a 2-unit. So students can do SOR2 in year 11 and also drop that down to SOR1 as they move into year 12. So there's a combination of subjects there that they can do in religious education, but it is compulsory. Again, thank you for your time. There is a lot to digest. If I could just encourage you to really engage, gentlemen, because in that week 5 where you've got to make decisions, you want to be making an informed decision that suits you best and your abilities. So thank you once again. I'll now ask Mrs. Gardner to come up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Graham, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for your attendance this evening. I'll try to keep it brief because I know that you're receiving a lot of information and it is difficult to process all of that all at once. But as Mr. Graham said, this PowerPoint is available to you, and you also have your subject selection book to help you make your decisions. So I'm here to speak to you obviously about English, and my subject is quite a unique subject, and I know that every KLA coordinator here would be of the opinion that their subject is the most important, but my opinion that my subject is the most important is actually backed by Nesser. So they say that every student across the state must study English. It is the only mandatory subject, and so that gives it quite a significance, and it means that selecting your English course becomes quite an important decision to make. So within English, you know that you have to do English. There are some options available to you. And up on the screen, it presents to you the 3 main options, and then there is the potential to study even more English. If, like me, you love English, you can study up to 4 units of English in years 11 and 12. I'm going to start with talking about the course that has had the most significant changes just recently. So up until last year, the Nesser, the Board of Studies previously, indicated that if you were going to study English studies as your English, you could not use that towards an ATAR. And around this time last year, that decision changed. So English studies has become what's called a Category B subject. So you can now study English studies towards an ATAR. But as Mr. Graham has already mentioned, with Category B subjects, you are only allowed to study 2 units of Category B subjects. So if you choose to do English studies towards an ATAR, that will stop you from doing some other subjects, and some of those subjects are VET subjects. So you need to think about that quite carefully. English studies is primarily for those students who are not anticipating that they will go to university, but now they do have that option to use it towards that study. And so it's a course that's based primarily on texts that you would find in the workplace and writing styles that you would come across if you were to move into an occupation or to go to TAFE rather than to go to university. I'm not going to read everything that's up on the screen, but up there it will give you an idea of the kinds of things that you would do in an English studies course. If you choose to do English studies towards your ATAR, you will be studying a common module, and that means you'll also be doing a common exam with all of the students across the state who study standard and advanced English. Standard English is the course that most students here at St Greg's do. It's still quite a rigorous English course, and it's a literature-based course, so it means that we do a lot of reading and we do a lot of writing of essays. Again, I'm not going to read everything that's up on the screen, but it will give you an idea of what you'll be looking at across years 11 and 12. And this course is the one that most resembles what you've been doing in English up until this point. English Advanced is also an ATAR approved course, just as Standard is. Standard and Advanced both have now 3.5 hours of HSC exams. Previously it was 4 hours, and they've reduced that now to 3.5 hours across 2 exams. Again, this one is a literature-based course, and it is a very rigorous and demanding course. And for that reason, we are setting some prerequisites of sorts. So again, I'm not going to read everything that you will cover in that course. It's up on the screen for you to read, and it's also in your handbook. But I'll bring your attention to this slide. To study Advanced English here, you need to have a proven track record in English. And by that I mean you should be someone who has been in the A or B class most of the way along between years 7 and 10. And you should be someone who earns a mark above 70 at the semester 1 and semester 2 report time. You should be someone who ends up with an A or B grade for English. That's not to say they're the only people who can, but it is one of those subjects that you have to get my signature, a KLA coordinator's signature, in order to study and go ahead with that. So there needs to be some careful consideration given. It is quite a difficult course, and there needs to be a sense that you have a passion for English. If you are someone who does not enjoy reading or writing, then that's not the course for you to choose. As I said right at the beginning, there is the option to do 3 or 4 units of English, and that's what we call Extension 1 and Extension 2. Not very many students at all at St Greg's study those courses, which is a bit of a shame. And I think that's because they are rigorously demanding. They're quite academic. So again, I'll put up on the screen what things you would be studying and what's expected, but I won't read through all of it for you. Just before I hand over to Mrs. Giles, Mr. Graham has mentioned several times now about selecting courses based on your own abilities, your own interests. The same is the case for English. You know yourself the best. You know what you're capable of. There's also a lot of value in talking to other students, so either older brothers or sisters, current students here at St Greg's, about the English course that they're studying and what kind of things they do in that course and what's expected of you in that course. And then there are other people to help you make your decision. Obviously, after yourself and your parents and your brothers and sisters and friends, the person who can next best help you is your current English teacher. They know what you're capable of and what your strengths are and which course would be best suited to you and your abilities. Mrs. Dean is also available to help to make decisions regarding academic courses after secondary school and prerequisites for university. And then, of course, there's Mr. Graham and Mrs. Miller as well. So there are a number of people who can help you with making your decision. And I'll be here at the end of this evening's presentation to answer any questions about English. Thanks, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about mathematics, and unlike English, it is not compulsory. I know a lot of parents out there would say that it is, but it's not. And just like English, we've had changes to courses. So the courses that will be on offer for mathematics is the Mathematics Standard course, which is new. It started this year, so this year's Year 11 are the first ones to be doing this course. Mathematics Advanced, which will be brand new for Year 11 next year. Mathematics Extension 1, and in Year 12 only, Mathematics Extension 2. The changes that Nesser has made to the syllabuses means that there are some new prerequisites for each of these courses. Unfortunately, and I know it's quite small up there, but if anyone wants this information, it's directly from the syllabus, so if any parents want, I can email me and I can send you a link. Unfortunately, what they've done now is made mathematics unattainable really for some students, and that's for our lower ability students. They're saying that the prerequisites for standard are that you've completed all of Pathway 1, which we call 5.1, and majority of Pathway 2. So at the moment in Year 10, we have 3 Pathway 1 classes. And I know that the teachers have been speaking to students in class to tell them whether or not they would be capable of achieving good results in Mathematics Standard. I've got that information here with me tonight, so if you're unsure, you can come and see me at the end of the evening. So with Mathematics Standard, that's the wrong slide, it's doubled up. Sorry. Okay, with Mathematics Advanced, again, students have to complete all of Pathway 2 as well as Pathway 3 courses. So essentially Maths Advanced is only for those students that are completing Pathway 3 at the moment, as well as probably some students in the top Pathway 2 class, because I know that they've been exposed to some of the Pathway 3 content. And then Pathway Extension 1 will be just purely for students that have done Pathway 3 in Year 9 and in Year 10. As I said, these are brand new syllabuses, and they only came out at the end of last year, so we were unaware that it was going to be a challenge for students doing Pathway 1. We've tried with this year's Year 9 to start with no Pathway 1 classes, but the second half of the year we have had to create one. So again, if you're unsure about what sort of level that your son is capable of doing, come and see me. I've got a list of from teachers' recommendations, as well as I know that the teachers have been speaking to the students in class. So again, at the end of this presentation, please don't hesitate to come and see me.
I would like to now introduce you to Mrs. Sue Dean, who looks after vocational education here at the college. As far as Year 10 goes, she's had a fair bit to do with your sons so far this year. Those guys who have been doing one-day-a-week work experience, Mrs. Dean has organised that for your sons, and we've had a few boys who have been involved with small blocks of work experience, which has been also organised through Mrs. Dean. And of course, at the end of term 4, we have a block of work experience for everyone in Year 10 as well. So she'll be working with your sons in terms of organising that. But more importantly, for 2019 and beyond, Mrs. Dean is also involved in organising TAFE courses in the senior years, as well as school-based apprenticeships and traineeships. So I welcome Mrs. Dean.
Thank you. I was thinking, and I'm going to give my age away, but 30 years ago I gave my first careers talk, and I couldn't have told you what web design was. I suppose I thought webs was something to do with spiders, but the jobs that I told those boys about weren't invented that they do now, and the jobs that a lot of you will do haven't been invented. So don't get real hung up. We survived, and a lot of traditional jobs have still got the same name, just have different ways of going about things. So gentlemen, you do have to think about it. It's a really exciting time to step up and start having some say, but don't panic. And you have an absolute wealth of people here that will help you. And if you don't take their advice and their time, then really it's to your disadvantage. The world doesn't end in 2 years' time if you haven't made some good choices and you change your mind. Mr. Graham and I were talking this morning. You can go and do a Bachelor of Science degree at the end of your HSC and not study any science in Year 11 and 12, because the universities have come to talk about what they want as the capacity to learn. They just need to know you can learn, and then they'll take it on from there. They'll do your bridging courses and they'll do other things. Mr. Graham told you also about passing a subject. If we look at a vocational side of that, an employer won't look at you if you failed something in your HSC. An employer doesn't want someone who doesn't complete things. So gentlemen, whether, as Sir said, if you take an ATAR pathway or if you take a non-ATAR pathway, the same thing end is the same. You need to do as well as you can and a bit more, because it's very competitive out there. And so you are competing against everybody else, and one of the best things you have going for you is that uniform you're wearing. I guarantee within about a month, and I've already got 3, I will have lots and lots of emails and phone calls offering apprenticeships to our Year 10 boys, Year 12 boys, sorry. Because they know the standard of education we give our vocational students, they know our Boys to Men program, they know that we do graduate fine young men, and they're the people that they want. Year 10, yes, they'll look at you. The hardest thing to do, though, is that you don't meet certain requirements, and the first one is that you can't drive. And so common sense, a lot of apprenticeships will start with that prerequisite that you do have to have your licence. Many employers also like you to be a little bit more mature, a little bit more responsible for yourself. Maybe a year of senior schooling, as in Year 11, and then you're a lot more prepared to go into the workforce. Defence Force, police, ambulance, fire brigade, they want you to have what they call life skills as well. So it's not really a straight entry anymore after Year 12 into any of those. An apprenticeship, a TAFE course, a university course, they would much prefer you do that before you head into applying for the police force or whatever. So that's just some general things, and I'm happy to talk at any time about all of those things with you. I am here to talk about the other side, so probably the non-ATAR side of things, and just to give you a little bit of rundown of what we do here. So we have what we call VET courses, vocational courses. They're non-ATAR, and most of them are geared towards a post-school option. So you do a course, maybe you do construction, with the idea of hopping into an apprenticeship in the building trade at the end of that. They allow a student to obtain dual accreditation. So that means that you achieve your HSC, but you also achieve an industry-based award that is what they call an AQF standard. So that means Australian Qualification Framework. And that is recognised all around Australia. So you could take that qualification and you could go interstate and it would still be recognised. The courses that you can do under a VET course have all got a mandatory work placement component. That means that you go out for 35 hours a week, for 1 week, during that time that you're doing that course. We are very lucky that we have work placement and work experience. I should just qualify that a little bit. Very different things. Work experience is just that, and many schools have stopped it, simply because it is a bit of a paper war and it is difficult to find places. But work experience is that, just to give you a little bit of a taste of what the world of work is about. Work placement, on the other hand, is where you are tested on what you've been learning, your competencies. If you've done a construction course, if you've done primary industries, if you've done metal and engineering, you are tested by an assessor on that workplace as to how competent you are in those different courses. And that's why industry recognises the VET courses. You can only use one of those VET subjects, and that's been said before, that can be used for an ATAR, and that would mean that you would do the exam in that. So if you decided you wanted to use your VET course in construction, then you would sit for the VET construction course in your HSC year. All of the VET courses have a strong hands-on component, which is obviously the big side of it that people like and enjoy, but with that is a time restraint. It's a little bit, just common sense has to come into place. If I've got 25 boys doing construction, I may not get to all of them in a single period of time in a class. And so I mightn't see some of those boys till the next time that the class comes around. During that time in class, they've got to be working, and you've got to have a good work ethic so that you're not being, it's not a sit round and have a talk because Sir couldn't see me. It's get on and find out what I can do until I can catch up with Sir. So you do need to know that, and I think that's probably one of the things that brings boys undone. That's why self-discipline, self-motivation, they're all the words that I'd throw at you, that you're going to need if you take on these vocational courses. We offer these courses here at school. They're in your booklet, but I just quickly wrote them down. So construction, I've talked about. Primary industries, obviously attached to agriculture. Metal and engineering, a very big component of apprenticeships in this area. I always get people looking for that. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a trade that has fallen off, and yet there are a lot of apprenticeships every year in that. And the last one is to do with IT, of which I am the least qualified in, but it's information, digital media and technology, and where webs came from. Okay, something else you might want to consider. We offer what we call a chance for a boy to go out of school. So there are courses that are offered through TAFE. So they're TAFE delivered courses, and we call them TVET courses. They're available to every student, but we tend to give them to non-ATAR students as a preference. They're delivered off-site. The majority of our boys here go to Campbelltown TAFE, but some of them travel to Miller, some of them go to Granville, Wetherill Park, depending on what courses are being offered where. And we don't have any say in that. The TAFE dictate those courses for us. Every course is worth 2 units that you can use towards your 13-unit count, but they're not counted towards an ATAR. So they're non-ATAR courses, 2 units in value, can't use them towards your ATAR. They also have a 35-hour-a-week work placement component, so sometime during the time that you're doing animal studies, you'll be put into a vet to work for a week. Students receive a HSC, so it's exactly the same as the vocational subjects, plus a TAFE accreditation. So you might, depending on the course you do, obtain a Certificate 1 or a Certificate 2 or a Statement of Attainment. If you decide that that's something you really like, you can use that course to study further on after you leave year 12. So if you, for example, if you did real estate, property services, and you came out with a Cert 1, you can use that and get credit for that course and go on to finish the full course in Certificate 4 or Diploma. And the Diploma and Certificate courses are what take you into university. So you don't have to have an ATAR. Not everybody who goes to university needs an ATAR. And that's something else you need to realise. If you choose to do a vocational course for 2 years of study and you then complete that to a Certificate 4 or a Diploma level, you can use that course to go into university as a mature age student. We transport the boys who are going to TAFE because they go usually after or at lunchtime on a Monday or a Tuesday afternoon. So we're happy to take the boys mostly, as I said, to Campbelltown TAFE. We have got hire cars, which sounds very poshy, but it's actually financially better, to the boys who go to Granville and to Miller and those places. There is a cost involved, a small cost, but that is absorbed without too much trouble. The courses usually start at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they go till 5:30 or 6 o'clock. So obviously the boys have to make their own way home from those courses. There's a fee for every TAFE course, and unfortunately they're a little bit steep. They're somewhere, usually, I always wait till the last minute to say this, but I'll say it, somewhere between $1,000 and $3,500. However, we are funded quite generously for Year 11, and so we can offer 50% of that course fee that the college will pick up, and the parents will pick up the other 50%. What happens is that you get your fees in term 1, and you can have the whole year to pay that off. So many parents pay it off bit by bit over the year. In very few cases, there is the ability to go on to Year 12 with a TAFE course, but we do not get any funding for Year 12, and so parents would have to fill that whole Year 12 bill during that time. I've got here, students who undertake a TAFE course need to be proactive in chasing up the work that is missed in the classes that while they're at TAFE. So if you go to TAFE on a Tuesday afternoon, you miss period 5. They're not going to hold up anything just because you're not there. So you need to have some things put in place. You need to see a teacher and say, I'm not here on Tuesday afternoon, sir. Can I have some things sent to me? Can I have a friend of mine do things, etc., etc. Boys who do it, the boys who get proactive, the boys who address it from the beginning never have any trouble. The boys who think, you beaut, I didn't have to do geography in period 5 today, that's it, and they don't do anything about it, they're the ones who come unstuck. So you do need to have that ownership. As I said, it's time to step up, it's time to grow up, and these are the things that will help you with them. We'll be there for you, but this is the time that you need to take that on board. I've got a list of all the courses that are offered for 2019. In a perfect world, they all run. Nothing's ever perfect. So like anything, it's on numbers. But we've got a lot of boys doing courses at the moment, from animal studies, automotive, community services, property services, events, tourism, electrotechnology, which is obviously the beginning of electrical trade, plumbing, I can't read, screen and media, videoing, and fitness. So the complete list is down there where I will be, and there's an expression of interest form. Now, we just need to, same thing as when you do your subjects, we need to know who would like to be thinking about going to TAFE. So you fill that out. There's absolutely no commitment at this stage, but the forms will need to come in when you hand the other ones in to Mr. Graham as well. Okay. Last thing is the one that catches a lot of people off guard because they think it's such a good thing, and it is an excellent thing. However, it comes without a bit of a safety net, so I want to talk about the safety net. School-based apprenticeships are an amazing thing, and what they mean is a student can come to school and study in Year 11 and 12, and he can graduate at the end of Year 12 with his HSC and the first year of his apprenticeship totally signed off. So he becomes a second-year apprentice straight into the year after he finishes his HSC. How they do it is he comes to school 3 days a week in year 11. He goes to TAFE and does his training 1 day a week, and he goes on work placement the other day. So he works for an employer. In year 12, he is here 4 days a week, and he goes out to work placement. So there's no TAFE training in year 12. If you're sitting there at the moment, gentlemen, you would think you beaut, I only have to be here 3 days a week. But it's the same conditions I talked about. We still are going to run classes on the days you're not here. Now, you'll have study preparation or periods put into your timetable to make up for the fact that you aren't here. And there is an absolute expectation that that's when you would be finding out the work that you missed out on. Again, 95% of our boys are very successful, and they all graduate having both their HSC and their apprenticeship signed off. But someone occasionally falls behind, and they fall behind sometimes not through their own fault. If you're a sportsman and you're out training 3 nights a week, if you have a job and you work 2 days a week or you work every weekend, you are going to struggle on a school-based apprenticeship. Because one of the things of the school-based apprenticeship is the days that you go. And if you're going to do plumbing or electrical, you have to do 180 days between the beginning of year 11 and the end of year 12, which they take to the end of November. That is not enough days in a school term to fit into it. And so there's an expectation of you working Saturdays or working maybe a week extra during the extra weeks that we have off during the year. You'd start in January, for example. Some of you, if you got one signed up, we could let you start in year 10 in term 4 on your days. But there is an onus, and if you don't get the 180 days, you won't get your school-based apprenticeship signed up, and then that affects your HSC. So there are things that need to be thought about before you take on a school-based apprenticeship. The other thing is, which you'll love, gentlemen, is you get paid for it. So you are paid as an apprentice. But if I'm an employer and I'm paying you $110 for that day, I expect $120 worth of work from you. So it's not like work experience. It's not like I can sit there and maybe wander back after 3/4 of an hour for lunch. It is exactly what it is. It's a job. And you are expected to be there to attend TAFE full time, to be there every day for work, and then also from our point of view to fulfil the school things. So there's a lot of thinking that has to go on before it. It's a great thing, but it's not for probably the majority of people. The other thing is school-based apprenticeships are a little hard to find, and the majority of the boys who do them often have a family connection or a friend connection. TAFE used to try and find them, but TAFE have undergone a whole lot of training and organisation, so they're not in that position to do that. And if you don't know of anyone, I can put feelers out, but there's absolutely no guarantee on that, so that's something you do need to be aware of. The only other thing I wanted to make sure that you knew about, well, I've got here, you need to have a good balance when you're choosing your subjects. It's really important with your hands-on subjects that I talked about and how you manage that time, and that's what Mr. Graham and I will be talking to you about over the next couple of weeks. Just looking at the whole pattern, not the subject you might like the most, but the whole pattern of study and how it will fit into your lifestyle and what you have in your life at the moment. As I said, some of you are great sportsmen and train frighteningly 2 or 3 nights a week and play on the weekend. Some of you have started to collect money so that you can get that magic car for when the licence becomes relevant to you. All of those things need to be talked about and worked through before we go. I'm happy to talk to you at any time. I'm usually here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays at school, but you can always email me and I promise I will get back to you. I also, just quickly, this is a school-based apprenticeship handout. I've just photocopied the middle part of that out, and I've also got those down there with an expression of interest form for anyone who's interested at the end of the night. This is a book that we used to get. It's a Year 10 selection book. We used to get one for every Year 10, but of course nothing stays that way anymore. I have got 5 of them. I'm going to give Mr. Graham a couple and Mr. Cerrone Gentlemen, I'm happy for you to borrow them overnight, but they're a boomerang. They've got to come back so that we can share them with everybody. They're put out by the Board of Studies, by Nesser. They're put out by UAC together, and what it says is, if I like English, these are the subjects I could be doing. If I'm good at mathematics, maybe I should choose these subjects. If I'm very good at a HISI subject, then maybe I could look at that. Or you can go the other way. I want to be a pilot. What do I need? What subjects do I need? So it's a good little book. It's not produced, unfortunately, anywhere else except on a hard copy, but I can photocopy pages for you and scan them and do things like that as well. So they're in my office. As I said, Mr. Graham will have a couple, and I'll leave a couple with Mr. Cerrone, but we do need to share them amongst everybody. So, as always, happy to talk to you at any time, and good luck for the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
During the senior years, a lot of parents and their sons contemplate perhaps using or utilising the boarding facilities here at the college for those senior years. So I'd like to invite our boarding coordinator, Mr. Max Spencer, to the microphone to let you know of opportunities in boarding.
Thanks, Mr. Cerrone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be very brief. There was an article on the weekend in the Sydney Morning Herald, and it was about independent schools. And there was one on boarding, which I thought I'd share with you tonight, because I read through it and I thought, yep, we ticked most of those boxes, and we ticked all of them. So the main things in the article was looking at reasons to boarding, and some of these might resonate with you. And from a parent's perspective, a lot of us are doing longer working hours. Growing travel times for some boys as well. Increased demand for flexibility just in lifestyle in general. The fact that boarding schools are offering far more accommodating options these days for weekly boarding. And for us here, we offer two options there, extended and weekly. Extended, the boys come in for 3 nights, and the weekly option, they're coming in for 5 nights. So there's two options there for us. Benefits for students. This is all from the article. Students are more involved with schools. There's more time for sleep. That's a big thing for teenagers, especially when they're studying. And the phones are obviously taken at night time as well, which is one battle you don't have to worry about at home. We do that for you. Become part of a strong community. That's a real emphasis the boys place on being a boarder. They'll definitely get extended friendship groups, and they'll have those lifelong friendships with boys from all over country New South Wales. You can't put a value on that. Definitely get up to 3 hours study a night, and there's tutors there in all the key subjects. So if some of these things you've heard tonight, and when you make those choices, it's all sounding like you could do with a bit of support, it's definitely here for you. And it's definitely good for boys doing a lot of co-curricular, as Mrs. Dean referred to, coming and going with training, things like that, lots of late pickups, all that sort of stuff. Doesn't have to be worried about. They're here on site, fed, do their study, go to bed. So it works quite well. The final things there, the key things the article pointed out as the main things you'll get out of boarding, the main learnings. Self-management, it's been mentioned a lot tonight. Self-reliance, cooperation, living in a community, and tolerance as well there. So if they're things that you think, definitely we do pick up most of our weekly boarders coming into year 11 and 12. So if they're things you have been considering, that conversation's been going on for a while in homes, please consider it. It is a very common option with a lot of Sydney boarding schools, and we're no different. And if any of those things resonated with you tonight and you are thinking about it, I'm here to have a chat. You're always welcome to come and have a tour. That includes your sons during the days at school and yourselves as well. Very welcome any time. I can show you around and show you how it all works. Thank you.
And to close the formal part of the evening up here, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Matt Brennan.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you very much, Mr. Cerrone. As I said, I'll also be very quick, but just on behalf of Mr. Miller, who is on leave at the moment, there was just a few things that he was keen on ensuring that we emphasised, and to be fair, the presenters tonight have done a wonderful job in doing those things and getting that information to you. I guess for me, as a parent who is going through the journey with a son at the moment and been through it with a daughter, that the key messages have always been the same, and that they have been reinforced by all the speakers tonight. It is important to pick courses that you like, courses that you are good at, and courses that you're going to be prepared to work in. You never pick a course because all of your mates are doing it, because they'll always be your mates and you've always got recess and lunch and before and after school. And certainly don't pick it because your favourite teacher's teaching it this year. We're one of, I can honestly say, one of the few schools that I've been involved in where the timetable is built purely around the choices of your sons. Whereas I know at other schools I've been at recently, they've got a timetable where your son has to fit into it. By and large, our timetable is a blank canvas at the moment and won't be looked at until all of your son's choices have been put in. So they'd be the key messages for me, and I guess in closing I want to say the next stage of the evening as parents, if your brain's fried or turned to mush, the back doors is a really good option for you now. But for those who've still got some wants or some questions, I just want to thank the large number of staff who have stayed back this evening, who are sitting behind you, and I'll introduce them in a moment, for you to go and have a chat to about any information that you want on a particular subject area. So we have Mrs. Alyssa Ferenc, who is here for Visual Arts, Mr. Greg Bingham, who is here for PDHPE, Miss Jo Dash, our Learning Support Coordinator, Lucy Martin, Mrs. Lucy Martin, who looks after Hizzy, looking at particularly Geography strand, Mrs. Megan Murdoch, who looks after Hizzy, the History strand, Mrs. Melissa Giles, who you've heard from already with Mathematics, Mrs. Michelle Gardner, who you've heard from already with English, Miss Lydia Curry, who looks after IT. We have Mrs. Sue Dean, who's already volunteered to be down there. Mr. Luke Morrissey is here as well. He's our vet coordinator and also senior boarding coordinator. If Mr. Spencer's inundated with people with inquiries, Mr. Morrissey can help there as well. Mrs. Louise Miller, our Director of Teaching and Learning, will answer all sorts of questions on any subject area. Mr. Greg Cerrone as year coordinator, is happy to talk about any pastoral issues your sons may be having at the moment. We also have Mr. Baldino Vetrano, our Pastoral Care Coordinator. Again, very happy to speak to anybody today. We have Mr. Michael McGuigan, who's here on behalf of Adrian Harrison, Mr. Adrian Harrison for Agriculture. Mr. Lawrence Malasilia is here for Music. We have Mr. Hartnett, who is here for TAS. And we have Mrs. Sally Wall, who is here for Science subjects. So as you can see, we have a huge number of staff who've given up their evening to make it worthwhile for you this evening. The final message is to you gentlemen, the fact that your parents have come out on a night like tonight in the middle of the week shows just how serious they are about your HSC. And as upcoming Year 11 students, it's time for you to show just how serious you are about yours as well. So thank you again for coming this evening. Again, please see the teachers if you like, or you're very welcome to leave, and travel safe, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.